Yo, we gonna do this one a little different. We gonna keep that bop. Rock it out, see. Rock it out, see. Rock it out, see. I'ma call this rhythm roulette. I get lucky with rhythm roulette. Trust me, it's minimal stress. I get lucky with rhythm roulette. Who's next? Who's next? I get lucky with rhythm roulette. Trust me, it's minimal stress. I get lucky with rhythm roulette. Who's next? Who's next? Yeah, I just wanna be a big star and whip cars with the top drop under lit stars. Yeah, all I gotta do is spit bars. I got a homie named Jake to pull strings like a guitar. The got me making a grip, dog. And the haters probably pissed off. 3, 2, 1, lift off. Until my name is on the blimp, dog. Said I'ma keep the flow dirty like the water up and flip, dog. How do you rock the flow, make it hot? Well, I get in my zone, get what I got. I do fall off and make it back. The answer that, you know a brother love a bag, never lack that. I drop it like Baghdad. That's a bomb, I'm the bomb. Get the track, mad track that. They ain't facing the fact that might be the best at this rap crap, playing like blackjack. Either that or it's rhythm roulette. Trust me, it's minimal stress. I get lucky with rhythm roulette. Who's next? Who's next? I get lucky with rhythm roulette. Trust me, it's minimal stress. I get lucky with rhythm roulette. Who's next? Who's next? I hit my dance quick, rock out. Kid is a bandit, man, I'm handsome, but I be in the cut like a bandage. They be like, rock it out, see. Rock it out, see. Hey man, I'm standing on the top, respect the demand, they better hand it. They hit the bop like hands, it's so random. The way we pedal is go tandem. I'm a right big anthem, still I drop phantoms, send them jabs at me. Any problem I handle, if you wanna talk, we can chop it up like a sample, throw a chip up the flow. Roulette, go gamble, man, I scramble. The words still is lit, no candle, they say how do. You rock the flow, make it hot. I get in my zone, get what I got. I do fall off and make it back. Let me answer that. Keep striking flame like a match, who gon' match that? I'm back in my backpack. Yo, that's my bag, that's my bag. If you like that, track that. I'm just facing the fact that might be the best at this rap crap, playing like blackjack. Either that or it's rhythm roulette. Trust me, it's minimal stress. I get lucky with rhythm roulette. Who's next? Who's next? I get lucky with rhythm roulette. Trust me, it's minimal stress. I get lucky with rhythm roulette. Who's next? Who's next? I get lucky with rhythm roulette. I get lucky with rhythm roulette. Who's next? Who's next? I get lucky with rhythm roulette. I get lucky with rhythm roulette. Who's next? Who's next?
Thank you everybody for joining me. Hopefully the sound is okay today. I'm using a lavalier because I was lazy and didn't want to set up a shotgun mic. So thanks again everybody for joining. Really appreciate it. Loud and clear's in the house. Thanks for joining. Use of Portuguese, thanks for stopping by. Kevin from Florida, thank you. Good to see you. Vanity Shape, always good to see you, and thank you for joining. I really appreciate everybody. Honestly, I've had a lot of struggles with this video. I was gonna actually make one showing why it is that I'm struggling, but I really, today, based on limited, because I've only had a couple days to actually try to use my R5 after I updated the firmware, and I feel like Canon misfired. And I'll tell you why I think Canon misfired, and just take everything that I'm saying with a grain of salt because it's clearly my opinion, right? It may work for other people. There are workarounds, and there is a way to make it still a very terrific tool. But the way that I used the Canon EOS R5 when I used it for video, specifically for video, it was a specialty camera. It was a camera that I didn't need to rig. It was a camera that fit into tight footprint spaces. So maybe like inside of a vehicle, inside of a very small office, as a POV camera. Basically, I used it in its bare form, right? Just the camera by itself. And with this firmware update, I should also say, I primarily used it to shoot 8K RAW. And I used View Assist to help me judge my contrast when I was setting up my exposure. Did I use a light meter? Yes, most of the time. But there were times where I didn't need to. I trusted the tools that I could use just with the camera itself to judge my exposure, knowing that I was capturing in RAW and I was going to be bringing it into post-production, and I was going to process that RAW image as C-Log2. And I was able to nail my exposure 10 out of 10 times. To me, that's a big deal. Not having to rig up this camera meant I could throw it on the gimbal, use my exposure tools right on the back of the little LCD screen, know that the camera was going to deliver an image that was going to fit my expectation and my workflow. Fast forward to this new firmware update, and now in RAW, I have the ability to turn off Canon log. So what space am I working with? That's confusing. It's confusing to me. I tried reading the manual. I couldn't ascertain what the image is actually being processed as. And I think what I'm defaulting back to is, if Canon log is turned off when you're in RAW, then you're effectively using the built-in picture profile that the camera might be set to. So in my case, I leave it normally set to neutral, which really means I'm now capturing in RAW using the picture profile neutral on my camera. That was, I don't know, it just boggled my head a little bit. And then my two other options in RAW are to turn C-Log on, which is the OG C-Log, and that's okay, or C-Log3, which is what everyone was asking for, right? But you know what no one was asking for? No one was asking for our onboard exposure tools to become unusable. So with C-Log3, the way that it's working in this version of the firmware, if you're capturing in RAW, like I want to, and I want to use C-Log3, because C-Log3 is going to give me more dynamic range than C-Log OG, right? About one full stop. Why wouldn't I want that extra stop? So I want to use C-Log3. But if I use View Assist, then my monitor basically can't actually process View Assist. Like, I'm going to see blown out highlights, which really means if I freak out and begin to, adjust my exposure based on what I'm seeing on the screen, I'm going to underexpose my image and end up with a noisy image. That's a problem for me. So why am I calling it a misfire? I'll tell you what. From the very first Canon camera that I ever had, which was the 5D Mark II, and then I upgraded to the 1DC, and then I upgraded to the C300, the original C300, and so on. I've upgraded to where now I'm on the C500 Mark II, the C70, and the R5. Those are my three Canon cameras. Never have I ever expected my camera not to perform at a professional level, regardless of what shooting style I was in. Every single tool on a Canon camera, from the 1DC, the 5D Mark II, 5D Mark III, 5D Mark IV, and so on, anytime that they put software in the camera to allow something to work, the camera performed at 100% professional level, professional grade, 100% of the time. In the R5 now, with this monitoring problem with view assist on, when you turn view assist on and you're trying to capture in Canon Log 3, it is no longer at a professional level. And what it really feels like to me is that they saw the A7S III, Sony A7S III, the Sony FX3 come out. They felt the pressure with S-Cinetone and you know, basically everything that Sony is doing now. And they tried to appease all of us who said, please put C-Log 3 in this body. I really wish someone would have said, if you put C-Log 3 in that body, you won't be able to monitor C-Log 3. Or even if they would have did it the way that they use it on the C200, where you're capturing in C-Log 3, but you can't monitor in C-Log 3, if someone would have said that out loud, this guy right here would have never upgraded the firmware, because I was happy capturing the way I was capturing, getting the image the way that I was getting it, and being able to monitor my image with view assist on, which is better than view assist off, in my opinion, for my way of shooting and my eyesight and you know, my scenarios. That was a much better option than what I have now, because my option now is turn view assist off so that I don't freak out about everything that's overexposed or looks like it's overexposed on the image. And yes, I know I could turn the waveform on and I can actually see whether I am or not clipping something, but it's still disturbing to see blown out highlights on the LCD screen. And then, or the second option is rig up my camera with an external monitor. And some would say, if you're using the Canon EOS R5 professionally to do video, which is not a video camera, right? I've said it before, many other people have said, the R5 is not an A cam. It is not. But for me, it was a specialty cam. And if I want to use it on the gimbal, I don't want to have a monitor on top of the camera or on the side of the camera to make my gimbal even heavier. Because if I want a heavy gimbal, I'll use my Movi and I'll throw the C500 on it. That's why I'm calling it a misfire. And this is what I did, right? So I was like flat out disappointed. I mean, if I'm totally transparent, you guys have heard me give Canon a lot of praise over the years on my channel. This time, they have to take this hit. And hopefully it's not just me that feels this way. Hopefully it's more people that are using their products that gives them a call, because I called Canon. Actually, the first thing I did is I reached out to someone that I know, I'm not going to use their name, at Canon, and said, if I roll back the firmware to the previous version, the version that did not offer C-Log 3, am I going to ruin my camera? And the answer was no. So of course I tried it, except the software, the firmware itself, would not allow me to roll back to a previous version. The only way to roll back to a previous version is to send it back to Canon. So I called Canon and I said, hey, so here's my situation. I'm in the middle of a project, which, by the way, this is a life lesson that all of you should, you probably would never make this mistake, but I'm going to say it out loud in case someone would even think about it. When you're in the middle of a project, don't upgrade firmware on whatever cameras you're using. I happen to be right in the middle of a corporate documentary, and I have 4 more days of shooting, 2 of which are full, that were supposed to be gimbal work for the R5. So I called Canon and basically said that, hey, I'm in the middle of a project. I was stupid enough to upgrade the firmware on the R5, and maybe you don't know this, maybe you do and you don't care, or maybe no one bothered to test it before they actually released it. But when you have view assist on, you cannot properly monitor your image. You have to rely on the EV meter and on the waveform to determine what your exposure is, because the image that's on the LCD screen cannot display Canon Log 3 with view assist turned on. It can't do it properly. And they said, well, maybe there's a problem with the way your firmware loaded. I was like, well, I'm not the only person talking about this on social media. I'm the only one that is in the middle of a project and wants to roll back. So like, how do I make that happen? And sure enough, the only way to make that happen is for me to send the camera back, which I am going to do, send it back to Canon so that they can roll it back for me. And apparently it's going to be covered under the warranty, which is fine, except even with the, the Canon, whatever the Canon service is, that's still a three days for me without a camera. And yes, I get to borrow or get a loaner, but that's still a very big inconvenience for me on something that Canon should have been upfront about, in their release notes. Hey, by the way, if you upgrade to this new version of the firmware, you will not be able to use view assist. That little bit of a warning would have been enough for me to wait and see who was brave enough to do it and figure out what they were going through before I jumped head first and did it myself. And I think that that's really the point of my video and what it is that I wanted to say. I'm disappointed that for the first time in my history with working with Canon gear, I finally now have a situation where I feel like Canon is not treating me like a pro. Canon is, I don't know, maybe trying to stop the bleeding, maybe trying to stop the exodus, if that's actually happening. I don't know a lot of people that are actually making the switch, but I'm going to tell you, I've been shooting on Sony now for a few months. And Sony is making it really easy for me to get the pictures and the images that I want without stupid struggles like this. I know that if I want to capture RAW on my Sony, I need to use an external recording. So knowing is allowing me to make decisions where dropping the firmware update, blasting out emails to everybody who owns the equipment, because I got an email from Canon saying, hey, by the way, there's a new firmware update and you should update, without letting me know what my consequences are if I choose to make that transition. That is why I'm calling it a misfire. That is what is now going to create a bit of resentment and maybe cautious, sidestepping moving forward for me when it comes to what Canon is releasing. Because I don't want to get burnt again. And I don't want to be forced. I have monitors, so it's not that. I just don't want to be forced or put in a position where they assume they understand what I needed and what I was comfortable with changing about the way that I shoot. That is my problem. And that is why I'm making this video. And yeah, it's a little bit of a rant, and maybe it's not a big deal for everybody else. But again, for me, I use view assist. I've always used view assist. I use view assist on my C500 Mark II. I use it on the C70. I've used it on every other Canon camera that I've ever owned. And now on the R5, which is not an inexpensive camera by any stretch, I can't use it. I have an issue with it. And I hope that every one of you who has Canon cameras, and if you have this same issue, you all call Canon, because when I called them, they said I was the first person to call and complain about it, which makes little, if any, sense. Maybe I was the first person that individual was, made aware that brought it up as a problem. But you look up on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on YouTube, there are plenty of people that are disappointed with not knowing that their view assist was going to essentially cause monitoring issues, or that they were going to have to use an external monitor to decode the Canon C-Log 3 and actually be able to see sort of what that end result is. Hey, James, thanks for stopping by, man. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to jump in on the comments, see what you guys have been saying as I've been going through my little monologue. Before that, though, cheers. I'm sure it's noon or later for almost everyone. It is for me. It's like 2:50, and we haven't done a wind down in a while. And before I get even more worked up, I'd rather chill out. So anyway, I'm disappointed. It is what it is. And I let those people know at Canon that I was disappointed. They were not, they were like, yeah, I understand, which, you know, it is what it is. Interesting to hear this one. I'm liking the cinema gamut on C-Log 3. Okay, so what's really interesting about this comment, Darrington Jones, is that the cinema gamut, and you know what, I will actually show you what it is that I'm saying here. Check this out. All right, I'm hoping you guys can see my screen. So let's see here, cinema gamut. Canon log 3 recording notes. What I'm looking for is where they basically, oh, here it is. I just passed it. So anytime that you choose like Cinema Gamut or BT 2020 or 709, it is used to pump out and feed the HDMI signal only. It is not used to bake into the metadata of the actual capture. So that's really interesting to me. So essentially they're saying, hey, by the way, you could choose whichever color space you want to be in or gamut you want to be in, but that's really used so that you can monitor, nothing is going to be baked into the image, which, you know, I had this conversation with James over text, and James made a comment about how maybe someone was just copying and pasting things as they were putting the new manual together. And it is possible that that happened. But I don't know. I'm just kind of confused. So Vanity Shape says, I already know where this is going. You know what? That's a good point. I have not looked at what happens in the viewfinder because I don't shoot that way. Because as I'm saying, my use case would have been on a gimbal, and you can't put your eye up onto the viewfinder. But I will be sure to check that out because I think that that's kind of interesting. The view assist is completely off with C-Log 3. Yeah, it's garbage. I mean, it's unusable. You never have that well-exposed image. The LCD screen is too bright, in my opinion. I think the LCD screen is just flat out not able to decode C-Log 3, or the LUT that they're using for view assist is the wrong LUT altogether. Like something is just really, really wacky. Let's see. Ben, hey, Ben, thanks for stopping by. What is the dynamic range in RAW with C-Log 3? Yeah, I don't know that I know what that answer is right this second, but I know that in the past, I've been able to get about 12 and a half stops of dynamic range out of the EOS R5. I'm guessing it's not going to improve, but somebody, if any of you know the answer, post it in the comment, because I haven't tested it. And honestly, I don't even know how much more I'm going to use the R5 for video moving forward. That's just total transparency here. In fact, this person that I know at Canon who has an R5 literally said to me, the R5 is a stills camera for me. So then there's that. Okay, Adam, sound issues. You can still shoot C-Log 1 with view assist. So I have sound issues. What are the sound issues, guys? I should have caught that earlier. Sorry. Are you all able to hear me? If you're not, sorry. And if we are having sound issues, I'm just going to end the live stream because what's the use? Okay, Darrington Jones. Some fallout in audio distortion, maybe a battery is dying or a transmitter is receiving. So what's weird is that I'm using a wired lavalier. So this lavalier is literally wired into the XLR of my camera. But yeah, I mean, if the sound is an issue, we're going to stop it here. On the bright side, by the time you get the camera back, you'll be cooled down enough to shoot another 10 minutes of 8K. That is hilarious, loud and clear. And that's the other thing, right? Like, they give us all these, I don't even know where to start. I'm just like so over it at this point with the R5 and the video capabilities of it, specifically because this firmware update just like set me over the edge. So they give us compressed RAW, they give us compressed IPB. It extends the total amount of capture that you can do on any card, right? Because it's compressed. But the heat issues are still there. So eventually you're going to overheat before you run out of media. And that was true before this update. So what's the benefit? Like, seriously, what is the benefit? If anybody knows what the benefit is, leave a comment, because I can't figure it out. Thoughts on the FX3 versus the C70? So if you need 4K DCI, C70 is better. If you need timecode, C70 is better. If you don't mind the extra weight, C70 is better. If you need full frame without a speed booster, FX3 is better. If you need a smaller footprint, FX3 is better. If you need something that allows you to be mobile, FX3 is better. If you need high frame rates, let me just put it this way. When I use my Sony a7S III, I don't have an FX3, so I have a Sony a7S III. I can shoot at the absolute highest possible quality that that camera can capture it. And my Mac Pro, which is right there, my Mac Pro, is able to render, even if I'm capturing an S-Log3, and then I'm applying color correction and color grading, I can render that out either as ProRes or H.264 or H.265 at more than 200 frames per second. The C70, at the highest possible quality, after I apply color correction, color grade, whatever LUTs and so on, the fastest that my Mac Pro can render that clip is roughly 96 frames per second. So if speed is important, if file sizes are important, if your delivery is anything like, if it's anything other than cinema, in many cases, the FX3 is going to be better. Why am I saying that? Because RF lenses are kind of expensive and they're full frame, right? But the C70 is a Super 35 sensor camera. So it makes little sense to me, like from an investment standpoint, to spend the money on a Super 35 frame sensor that can only accept full frame glass. So I think that is where I'm falling when it comes to the C70. The C70 for me is a terrific tool as a Super 35 camera when I'm pairing it with my C500 Mark II. So, the Sony a7S III for me is a perfect camera when I'm pairing it to the FX6. And, they each have their place, and that's really how it is that I use them. But, consider that. So Darrington Jones, you're just now getting receptive towards Canon. Canon's been screwing us for years now. Yeah, honestly, this firmware update is what is causing me to feel let down, right? Because I've never went or moved forward with the Canon product without understanding what I was getting myself into. And this firmware update did exactly that. It got me to where I am without understanding what my consequence was. That's why I'm resenting it. Yeah, Andrew, I mean, I don't even know that they care, if we're honest, right? Like, I mean, who am I? In the grand scheme of Canon world, who am I? That's the truth. I'm just one other person that bought their camera. James Jackson, I'll reset. What's up to you? Thanks for stopping by, dude. Appreciate it. Simon, thanks for stopping by. Ed Hughes, they pulled a new R6 firmware to fix that, so maybe the same will happen for the R5. You know, I hope so. But what happens in the meantime, right? Like I said this to the Canon rep that answered the phone when I called them. I said, what do I do right now? Because most of us buy cameras because this is how we make a living, right? We need them to work, and without work, we're not getting paid. So if I send it back to you today, which they offered, when am I getting my loaner? Oh, well, Friday was Good Friday, and Monday is a holiday. So 3 days from Tuesday means the end of next week. And that's after I paid my $1,000 dues to be part of this program, you know, where I get discounts on repair and so on and so forth. What do I do in the meantime? Because my projects aren't going to stop. The timeline for deliverables isn't going to stop. My clients don't really care as long as I deliver. So what happens then? That's kind of where I'm at. Anyway, it just kind of irritated me. At least they aren't putting 2005 quality LCDs on there. So yeah, that's true. Like Sony calling it listening to consumers or limiting the crop mode cams like Fuji. Okay, so I think that comment by 77 Driss is valid, right? But it doesn't mean it's a free pass to neglect us. Like, I feel neglected. I feel abandoned as a professional, and that's just, I don't know. It is what it is. This is why I left Sony and never looked back. After my R5 issue on a shoot, I switched so fast to the Sony a7S III, and I'm super happy with it. I mean, I think if there is one lesson for all the camera manufacturers to know and understand at this point, is that as content creators, as filmmakers, as professionals, we all have choices. And companies like Blackmagic, Sony, Red, Canon, they've all made it so that we have a lot of choices within a relative same price point. And if they don't take care of us, that's me included, I have zero problem switching away from Canon at this point. No problem. I'll switch to Red in a heartbeat, like exclusively to Red in a heartbeat, without even thinking about it, even if it costs me more to get set up to do all the things that I do now, exclusively on Red. I would do that without hesitation because of the consistency that I'm able to get out of Red. Sony is less expensive in many ways, and they go out of their way to make it easy to shoot with smaller crews. without skimping too much on quality or features. That's another terrific option. Blackmagic, I mean, Blackmagic has the Blackmagic type of problems that Blackmagic has always had on their lower end equipment. But you can't argue that for the price, that image quality is punching way above its class. Another great option. Fujifilm, I would never switch exclusively to Fujifilm. That's not going to happen. Olympus doesn't exist, and Nikon is not even an option or has ever been for me. But going the Sony route or going the Red route, both of those are real possibilities for me if we continue to see challenges like this. Because, as I said earlier, for me, the R5, it's going to be now a stills camera for me. It's just, it is what it is, and that's unfortunate. Let's see, Darrington. I started going through the manual today, didn't make it as far as you have yet. Good stuff. Thank you. Stefan, basic rule in software development, never upgrade key. Yep. I know, Stefan. I knew better and I did it anyway because I was stupid. That's just the truth. Kemke has a great video about the myths about C-Log 3 on the R5. Yeah, I saw that video. I think his point is great. I'm not sure that I've seen what all these myths are. You know, C-Log 3 is always going to have more dynamic range than C-Log original. I don't think that's ever not been true. So if someone, that's what I took out of Cam's video, by the way, that some people were saying that C-Log 3 has the same dynamic range that regular C-Log does. And that is false and always has been false. From back in the 1DC days to the, to where we are now. So if anyone ever actually really did believe that C-Log 3 and C-Log original had the same amount of dynamic range, then they're probably starting out in video and never read the manual, and then also never actually used the camera, is going to be sort of like my takeaway here. It's basically the same, can really outperform raw sensor data. I don't think anything can outperform raw sensor data when you have the ability to, so you're right, James, I agree with you. When you're able to actually say, this is where I want my dark areas to be, this is where I want my midtones to be, and this is where I want my highlights to be, and then manipulate the gradients in between those. Raw sensor data is always going to beat it. The confusing part for me is that now I can turn C-Log off when I'm capturing in RAW. So what am I capturing in? I don't know. So it was cracking earlier, so I must have been clipping earlier. So maybe this microphone is a Sanken COS 11D. So they're super sensitive. And I'm sure that when I got all excited and got worked up, I was clipping. So sorry, everyone who had to endure that. And thank you, Devin, for letting me know that it's fine now. And thank you, Ed, for letting me know that it's fine now. If I remember correctly, sound was a problem when you were moving around. Yeah, so I got worked up, so I apologize. See, this is why we're chilling out. Cheers, everyone. Let's see here. Now the sound is good now. There were some failures, but it hasn't happened for some time. Okay, thank you, user Portuguese. Max, you are in the house. Thanks for stopping by, dude. Okay, vanity shape. My R5 must be broken on every 5 minutes of overheating timer. I can shoot 30 minutes of 8K raw light. Yesterday I shot 2 hours raw light in a row and left with 5 minutes of overheating at the end. That's awesome. That's actually really good to know. I don't push my R5 that much, I guess. Like my average clip that I shoot on the R5 is maybe 90 seconds. And then I stop the trigger because, well, one, and I think most of us do this, right? So you guys all know that I've been shooting RED for a while, and RED Minimax are very expensive. So managing my shot list and getting the shots that I need without all the extras or just allowing the camera to run has never been an option given how expensive Minimax are on RED cameras. So, 8 or 9 years ago, whenever I started shooting on RED, I guess I'm going on 9 years. I'm getting old. Wow. That's how I started to shoot. And ever since then, regardless of the camera system, that's how I shoot. So I never just let the camera run. Unless I'm doing a live stream, in which case it's recording to an SSD, not the actual camera. But you can't use Canon mirrorless or DSLRs or hybrid cameras when you're live streaming, and the live stream is going to be longer than 30 minutes because you get a blackout if you don't touch or half press the shutter or do something to let the camera know you're still there. That sucks. Okay, loud and clear. Lighter file sizes are a big reason I'm not shooting interiors on Blackmagic or RED anymore. Yeah, A7S III does nearly everything right, and the all-eye codec is super light. I know. Honestly, my big hang-up with Sony prior to where they are today was their colors. Like for people like me, or darker, or more yellow, skin tones just always looked wrong. And that was something I couldn't get over. Like it used to bother me. And that was the main reason why I stayed away from Sony. Are Sony colors today now perfect? No, but they're damn close. And they are definitely competitive against Canon colors. That's what I meant, about we now have a lot of options. We got options. And that's what everybody needs to understand. Max, you're going to have to rewind it, dude, because there's no way I'm going to go back through 42 minutes of me blabbing. My voice is already getting fatigued. It is, sorry, I guess. Rewind it. Okay, also I think Canon is trying to set everyone up to buy the R5C. Okay, there is no doubt about that. I think Canon, okay, the fact that they included the verbiage in their manual about how Canon C-Log original, when you choose the Canon original gamut or color, reproduces the image similar to the Canon 1DC, the original Canon 1DC. I think they are absolutely teeing us up so that we can then transition to this new camera that likely will be, $7,000 or $8,000. I absolutely think you're right. Yeah, you're just another person about their camera. Yeah, that's the truth. Who the hell am I? Nobody gives a shit. That's the truth. I'm just one other person that bought into what they wanted. Hey, Cam, thanks for stopping by, dude. We were just talking about you a little bit earlier. I don't know if you were here already because I'm behind on comments like usual. Okay, I just wanted to come and let you know that C70 M1 Mac Mini have rebooted my company. Just cool. That's awesome, Claire. That's actually really good to know. And I need to catch up with you. I know I've been on a project, and I am going to finish next Saturday. So if you're still cool with it, I'd like to catch up with you after that. So in about 8 or 9 days time. And thanks again for stopping by. Thought I would love to see this, if they stepped up their stuff to give us options like Sony does, but we all know Canon is going to try and sell us. So Canon is very good at milking money out of people. And when I say this, I'm not being like a douche with this comment, right? But there is a reason why Canon, for example, they have a promotion going on right now They're trying to get more people to step up and buy the C500 Mark II, and they're giving them the option to get into this camera system at 0% interest for 24 months. That seems like a really good option, right? I'm not one to buy cameras on credit, even if it's at 0%. Like, that's the worst thing that you can do. But if you follow the way that Canon drops these little incentives, they're usually around life cycles of products or new products being released, which really means that when you're about to finish paying off that C500 Mark II, they're going to show you another camera that you're going to want. And then they're going to give you another financing option for this other camera so you can buy that one too. And then when you're about to finish paying that one off, they're going to show you another product that you're going to want. They're going to make it easy for you to buy it again by giving you financing options. That's Canon's little rope and trick that I think how they get a lot of people to step up from whatever they might have been shooting on into a higher tier. And that's one of the reasons why if I don't have the cash, I won't buy it. It's that simple. I don't care what it is. If I don't have the cash, I can't afford it, which means I adapt to whatever it is that I can afford and do have to make my projects work. For what it's worth, it's worked for the company and it's worked for me, over the years. But if you have to, I guess you have to. 4 channels of audio footage came back into the edit suite and looks great. Glad I did not go Team Sony this year. I mean, yeah. So the FX6 and even the Sony a7S III, I was going to grab it, but I'm tethered, so I can't. You have 4 channels of audio too. Vanity shape, try shooting 8K RAW in C-Log 1. Everything works as before. The upgrade view assist also. Okay, I will try that. And if that's my ticket, then that's my ticket to get me through this project. Because I would hate to have to mix in like a Sony camera when everything else has been shot on 3 C500 Mark IIs. It would kick my butt, I think. If you were going to buy another camera, I have EF glass. I would buy a used C300 Mark II for the money. It's great. Canon needs to come into the 21st century on their business models or keep losing customers. C300 Mark II is a terrific, terrific camera that is, and I've said this on my channel before, and I know that it's rubbed people in not the right way, but the C300 Mark II, the image that it can perform not in RAW, in camera, is better. Not by 5%, not by 10%, but like by 25% over the C200 RAW image. It is. And it is a faster workflow, and it is cheaper to work with that camera. It is a better option over the C200 10 out of 10 times. In my opinion, it's opinion. I own both cameras, and I'm going to tell you, I can get more dynamic range, a better image, a faster workflow out of my C300 Mark II than I could out of the C200. Which is the reason why the C200 was let go first. Okay. Canon R5 is sinking ship. Canon R5 is a terrific stills camera. So I'll leave it at that. The images, the stills images out of the C5 or out of the R5 are terrific. I really like that. Good stream. Thoughts on the C300 Mark III. C300 Mark III with the DGO sensor and the high frame rates make that camera a beast of a camera and enough of an upgrade over the C300 Mark II. It is a terrific camera. It cuts incredibly well with the C500 Mark II. Super 35 sensor, that's the thing. But also, and I don't know that a lot of people like really understand this until they're like in the weeds with it. But shooting shallow And shooting by yourself, especially with manual lenses, is way easier on a Super 35 sensor than it is on a full frame sensor. And that matters. And also, the depth of field that you get off a Super 35 is pleasing enough to where, like, we don't need the focal plane to be like less than an inch, right? I mean, unless you're, no, I don't even know when you would actually need it to be less than an inch, at least not for any of the work that I do. So, in my opinion, if I wasn't trying to differentiate myself and my business from my competition, I would still be primarily a Super 35 shooter. The reason why we went full frame is to create separation between the people that I compete against in the markets that I compete. That's the main reason. There is no other legitimate reason for the projects that we shoot and the type of work that we do to have made the jump to full frame. That's the truth. Let's see. RAW defaults to standard profile, I believe. So is that RAW off, Aaron? Just curious. And I didn't see it in the manuals, which is why I'm confused. And vanity shape is confirming, so it must be. I missed the misfire. What was Canon's misfire? Canon's misfire is the fact that they allowed for their tools to now not perform optimally at a professional level for us. View assist fails on the back of the LCD screen when you're shooting Canon Log 3 on the R5 after the firmware update, of course. That was the misfire. They're treating us who make a living out of doing this, so I'm going to call all of us professionals, like guinea pigs or consumers, which at this price range we're not. Opinion. Just throwing it out there. Sonys are good as B cams when they have Canon or Reds as reference, and I can match them perfectly, but no Red or Canon as reference, and just Sony, no way. I might be able to change your mind, and you know what? I'm going to send you some files so that you can look at, and then you can determine if they would stand well by themselves or not. Canon should do some tutorials on YouTube, would clear up a lot maybe, and not just product type videos, actual tutorials, post workflow, etc. So Ed, I think Canon actually does that. They have done that a few times, and then they hire other people like Jem Schofield, for example, to then also do additional tutorials. So what you all may or may not understand or know is that the Canon marketing budgets, for example, are set 2 or 3 years in advance. So what Canon does is Canon allocates educational content budgets and then gives it to their dealers. So like Able Cine, for example. So when Canon needs tutorials on workflow or how their products work and such, they then let Able Cine know. Able Cine then talks to the people that have done content for them, like Rubidium, who you guys may know, he's been on this channel before, or Jem Schofield, and says, hey, we have this kind of budget and we need these kind of educational videos. And then they produce them, and it's actually being done for Able Cine, but it's on behalf of Canon. That's how that works. Because if I went to Canon today and said, hey, I have this course on camera XYZ that I'd like to produce and I'd like you to fund it, my funding, even if it was approved, wouldn't happen for 2 years into the future. So in case you guys didn't know how that works, that's how that works. At this point, Frosty, I do not believe I will be picking up the Canon R5C because of what happened. I'm kind of bitter, and I don't feel like giving Canon my money right now. C-Log 3 View Assist, Rec 709, 8K RAW recording works. Playback over LCD with View Assist not. Is this the issue? No. The way that View Assist blows out highlights in the scene on the LCD is my issue. Sadly, I canceled my pre-order for the C70. My maxed out MacBook Pro 16 cannot handle the long GOP H.265 files. That sucks. C70 is a good camera though. Hey, what do you think about Sony a7 III in 2021? So I got rid of my Sony a7 III because my Canon cameras were better than the Sony a7 III. I think if you're going to buy a Sony camera and you're going to use it for video, you really should think about the FX3 or the Sony a7S III, or step into their FX6. I think that those are the Sony cameras that I would buy in 2021. Devin Miller, new member, thank you. Andrew, thanks for stopping by, dude. Appreciate it. I'll catch up with you later. Simon, so you guys, okay, you all are talking. Oh, okay, got it, Claire. That makes sense. And I was sad to sell my C300 Mark II, love the image from the camera, but having just shot a ton of 60 frames per second, 4K the other day, I can't go back. There is something to the 60 frames per second that if it's fast action, it just flat out looks better. It just looks better, even if it's going to end up being streamed. So I can agree. Okay, let's see. Frosty. I'm still curious about Canon and the global shutter they had as an option on the C700 and what's next. Yeah, I never picked up the C700, and also I never shot on the C700. I know some people, and Tyler, I don't think he's in this live stream, but he's used the C700 in the past, but I'm not sure that he used the global shutter. I don't know. I don't know, but it would be interesting. I honestly, I don't have any problem with the refresh rate of my C500 Mark II. I also don't have the problem on the Komodo or on Monstro. So I don't know if I really need, well, I guess Komodo has a global shutter, but I don't know that I need global shutter for the stuff that I'm shooting today. I love the full frame truth. I want to do 8K to segregate from competition. 8K is a different workflow for sure. So after the update, the view assist is broken everywhere on the R5. You can set the camera to anything where it works. So if you turn view assist off, the display does a much better job of actually seeing you, or showing you where your highlights are falling. So I think that that's the only workaround, unless you're using an external monitor. Let's see. Appreciate the opinion from a working pro. Merci from Montreal. I was in Montreal a couple years ago. I love that city. It was rainy and cold when I was there, but it was still a beautiful city. Andrew, I think some people are just saying things to say them. Silly as hell. Okay. Cam, what's Cam saying here? I personally can't deal with 10-bit footage anymore, so I don't really take the R5 mirrorless camera super serious for video work, at least for the clients I'm trying to get. So that's actually a really good point. And see, Cam is in this Goldilocks zone of being able to work exclusively with red and red footage, and it makes a difference. Like, as much as we pay for red cameras, red makes post-production pleasant, easy, and fast. And that's not something I can say about all the other camera companies. as long as I know what I'm doing when I'm exposing on a red camera, my post-production is going to be smooth and consistent regardless of which camera body I'm using. That's why I love red. Okay, you're having conversations. For me, it's raw or nothing now. I hadn't read that comment yet, and yeah, it's so true. The flexibility of R3D and Red Code RAW is just, when you use it, like, it's difficult to go back and accept something less. Cool. Okay, y'all are still having conversations. Phil, thanks for stopping by, dude. Like, you don't know how big of a fan I am of you and all your work. In terms of given value proposition R5 4500, I think it's a good value considering the market. And similarly, what would an R5C be priced to be appealing to all-day shooting? Honestly, for me, Phil, rather than using an R5C, I would use a Komodo all day long, because the post-production workflow is just, I just love the red post-production workflow. It's easy, it's consistent, I'm familiar with it, and I know what I'm going to get out of it. And I'm not going to have to struggle to make something fit into the box that I need for delivery. That has always been the benefit for me when I'm shooting on red, and why it is, that I own the red cameras that I own. So as far as price point, if the R5C is any more expensive than the 1DX Mark III, I don't think they're going to sell a lot of them. I just, like, why? Let's see. Isn't it most likely a bug that will be addressed in Canon sooner than later, i.e. R6 firmware? So Kevin, it's possible that they do address the monitoring problem. And, as I mentioned, it could simply be that they're applying the wrong LUT. Someone made a mistake. But my real problem with it is, did no one test it? Is there no quality control? Is Canon becoming black magic? If that's the case, then I don't want to work with Canon, right? I want to be treated like a professional. And what they did with this firmware update, by not informing me of what my risk is, was negligent on their part, in my opinion. That's my beef. I shot on C700 a couple times. Okay. Canon integrates easily with Arri too. So Canon's always been chasing Arri. So I can, yeah. Carlos, I'm a hybrid shooter and stepping into the cinema world. Which cam would you recommend? Canon C300 Mark III or Sony FX6? So that's a tough question. I would say, if you already own Sony glass, then FX6 makes more sense. If you already own Canon glass, then the C300 Mark III makes more sense. As far as image quality, noise performance, versatility, rigging options, and so on, I think both of them are equal. Sadly, need to go. We'll watch the rest tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. Hey, thanks, Vanity Shape. Always good to have you in the chat. Always appreciate your expertise. Red is a fun tool, but sometimes frustrating. The only thing that I will say that I'm not a fan of when it comes to red cameras, at least DSMC2, is they take a minute to boot up. And when I say a minute, it might be a little bit more than a minute. That's the only thing. Besides that, I don't really have any beef with them. I like the size, I like the weight, I like the flexibility, I like the rigging options. I love the codec. I love that I could choose which lenses I want to use and swap out my lens mount. Do I wish they had like a red version of NDs? Yes. but my Firecrest NDs work great, and I have a full set, so that eliminates that problem for me. Okay, Claire's got to go too. Thanks for stopping by, Claire. We'll catch up with you later. And thank you. Yes, 8 or 9 days. I'll see you. Sunchase Media, is it just me, or does the C200 RAW produce a better image than the new C300 and C500? Sunchase, if you are getting a better image out of your C200 than you are out of the C300 Mark III or the C500 Mark II, you are making a mistake. Like something, you skipped something, you're exposing wrong, your lighting is off, something is wrong. Maybe you're not, auto black balancing like you should on the cameras. The raw image as well as the non-raw image that comes out of the C500 Mark II and the C300 Mark III is superior to the raw that comes out of the C200. As I mentioned in an earlier statement, the C300 Mark II, not the 3, the 2, the previous version, non-raw produces a better image and a much better workflow than the raw workflow and the raw image out of the C200. That's my belief. If you have samples that we might all be able to see, drop a link and we'll check them out and then we can comment. Let's see. I am drinking Cab. I think this is Stag's Leap. I think it is Stag's Leap. You know what I like about the Red Ranger? I like that it's set up for studio use without anything to add. That's what I like about that camera. If I had to put it on a gimbal, I think my back and my shoulders would kill me. Keith, thanks for stopping by, dude. Really appreciate it. Keith, I think if you gave Sony a shot, you would see why it is that I'm saying Sony is making it easy to get the shots. And that's, I don't know. I don't know that I would have ever said that before, before this current Sony lineup. I don't know that I would have. Let's see. I think I got through all the comments. That's pretty awesome. I don't normally do this. So that's really all I got, guys. I mean, I'm going to have to, try to make it work, because as filmmakers, that's part of what we do, right? We figure out solutions. But I'm not going to pretend that I'm not disappointed. And I'm not going to pretend that I don't feel like Canon kicked me in the gut by not telling me that the tools that I'm comfortable using are now kind of not available because of the firmware update, and or that I have to use an external monitor if I want to use the tools like I had in the past. That's just me being completely transparent with all of you, and I thought it would be responsible for you all to hear it from me, given how much praise I've given Canon on my channel over the years. It's just, I'm disappointed, so it is what it is. See, yeah, you need to black balance those cameras. It will make a difference. And that's true of any cinema camera. Even the Sony FX6 has a function that is like black balancing, or it is black balancing. They just call it something else. So you definitely should do that. Okay, that's not for me. So just shooting a C-Log like you were before, problem solving until they fix it. Yeah, or don't use the R5, right? I mean, that's the other option, which we'll see. But regardless, I mean, I'll keep you guys posted. If you guys follow me on Instagram or Twitter, you'll know if I'm if I'm getting happier. But right now, I think the biggest thing for me why my feelings are hurt is because I'm disappointed. And it's just, it is what it is. I'm disappointed. Hey, David, thanks for stopping by from Kenya. Really appreciate it. Preparing to have a church in cameras which intend to buy Sony A1. What's your thoughts? So I don't have any experience with the Sony A1. So I can't speak to the Sony A1. I can tell you that the FX3 or the Sony A7S III are terrific cameras. I do think that if the cameras are going to be used in like live streaming scenarios, then maybe the Blackmagic pocket cameras are a better option. Especially now that they sort of sorted out their battery issue. The Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro, that might not be a bad camera, and the cost of entry on that camera is fairly low. So maybe you should consider that. And let's see. Yes, Sanchez, we'll be releasing more LUTs here over the next couple of weeks. I've just been I'm a bottleneck, right? So like as my team is working, I'm one of those people that needs to see things before we share them with the world. And I've been a bottleneck because I've been on set for the last 10 days, which makes it really, really complex when I'm like literally working 10 or 12-hour days, and then I'm prepping for the next day when I finish. So I've been a bottleneck. Once I figure that out, we'll get back to releasing the rest of the LUT packs. But all in all, they're there. We're going to have to revise the R5 LUT pack now that this has happened. And I'll keep you guys posted on that too. Hi, Carlos. I'm happy with the 1080 with the 120 frames per second. So I thought that was pretty cool that they added that, because I think that for social media, like, why do you need to shoot higher than 1080 if we're honest, right? So I'm glad that they did that too. Frosty, there's a church in Oregon using Komodos for live. I mean, if I have that kind of budget, then yeah, I would go Komodos across the board for live or studio work or overhead shots and so on. I'm not sure, I guess, what Sanchez was talking about with in terms of how much his budget is. But yeah, if you can, and if you have the budget, I'd start at the top and then work my way down. My number one choice in terms of cameras forever and ever, likely at this point, will be Red, followed by everybody else. So if the budget allows, that's where I'd go. Okay, Simon, I will catch up with you later. And you know what, guys? I mean, we've been at this for over an hour, so I want to just say thanks to everyone who joined in. Thanks for listening to my rant. Thanks for participating in the chat. Thanks for your support. And thank you all for just being part of this community. You guys are awesome. We're continuing to build this team of people, professionals, and the conversations are happening even when I'm not posting content, which I think is terrific. So again, thank you. Have a great weekend. Have a great Easter weekend for all of you. And I will catch up with you guys in the comments. And see you guys. Take care.
Let's break out. Come on, let's break out. Break out. Tell everybody break out. We bout to, it's time. Let's go, let's ride, let's roll. Got me feeling so free now. It's exactly what I need. Yeah, we knocking down the door. Turn up a little more. Hey, what you waiting for? Break out. Oh, we on the map. See you now where the party at. We the ones that he just let into the back. We the misfits. How you gonna react? We insomniacs. We ain't get no sleep. Break the rules. Can't stay on beat. Making moves, running through the streets. A to Z, follow my lead. This ain't the status quo, this is rock and roll. This is Skydive Yellow, now Geronimo. This is bye-bye, ta-ta, audio. This is all or none, this is all I know. This, that, I don't know, we try and go. I don't even know, I'm just trying to roll. Me and my friends trying to hit the road. Trying to catch a wave, gotta free my soul. Thought I was gone, but I'm back. Wild ones on the attack. Got no time to relax. Let's go pronto ASAP. They keep watching my moves. Added it near you. They ain't heard the good news. Well, this what you gotta do, just break out. Tell everybody break out. Break out. It's on a break out. We bout to, it's time. Let's go, let's ride, let's roll. Got me feeling so free now. It's exactly what I need. Yeah, we knocking down the door. Turn up a little more. Hey, what you waiting for? Break out. Race glasses, one's on me. I did the math, I got the tab. Stay on the path, I lead. Under the rays, throw on the shades. This here the life that I need. Top down to the breeze. Whole crew came with me. It's about to get litty. Shake it till you break it, baby. Run. Ooh, where we going? I'm trying to have fun. Life is what you make it. Gotta take it to the limit. Yeah, you know it's time to get it up. Can we go another round? Can you hear me now? How about we go and paint the town? I've been waiting for a while, show 'em how. It's time to break out. Break out. We bout to break out. We bout to break out. We bout to, it's time. Let's go, let's ride, let's roll. Got me feeling so free.